Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the stream. It is Tuesday, October 17th, and we are live from Miami, Florida, where surprisingly, I woke up this morning and took my dog outside, and it was a little bit chilly. Not like cold enough to put on a jacket, which I do really miss. You guys know fall is my favorite season of all. Nothing else even compares. But there was like a slight crisp in the air, if you will. It was like 62, little breeze. It felt really great. So I'm chalking that up as a win. I've got my Alaska sweatshirt, one of my favorite sweatshirts on today, pretending that I was in somewhere with actual fall and actual winter. But I will take the 62 degrees, sunny and a breeze as my win for the day. And I hope you guys have small wins in your day as well that put a smile on your face, because as we've said so many times, numerous times over the last few days, remembering how to smile and remembering how to have hope in the midst of all of the crazy darkness that we are all dealing with has never been more important. Love seeing all of you guys already active in our live chat on the stream today. Don't forget to let us know who you are and where you're watching from, especially if you are a new viewer to our streaming family. And I also just want to say thank you to all of you for your topic suggestions, for your questions, for your input, and for your prayers these last few days. It has been a really, really crazy few days in the news cycle and around the world as violence continues to heat up. And unfortunately, we are talking about additional violence happening around the world today, although a very underreported story that I think really needs to be out there and needs to be covered with more ferocity from the mainstream media. But I know it can feel a little bit doom and gloom around any content and any news and any live streaming these days. I promise we'll have some fun this week as well. But I think it's so important what you guys as individuals are doing, tuning into these independent live streams, talking about subjects that the mainstream media is just refusing to cover, sharing these streams with people who otherwise would have no idea what is going on or wouldn't have the opportunity to have a firsthand knowledge of what's happening with many of our interviewees that we've had the last several days. And by subscribing and following to these channels, it really does make such a world of difference in trying to get these very important truth-based stories out there to the world, where we need to spread truth now more than ever. As we're getting started today on the stream, I want to give a huge shout out to our amazing friends who are sponsoring today's stream for you guys over at Public Square. You guys might have seen on my Instagram or on some other platforms that I've already posted today. Public Square made a huge announcement today that I was able to help them break as a network of more than 65,000 plus small businesses that are all pro-life, pro-freedom, and pro-family. Public Square has already become America's marketplace for where to find businesses that share your values. But starting November 1st, their really exciting announcement that they put out today was that they are offering in-app e-commerce with one cart checkout on November 1st and beyond, meaning if you have the Public Square app, which you can download using the link I'm dropping in our chat right now, you will have the capacity to check out from any of the businesses on the platform that you would ordinarily have to go to all of their individual websites, be able to check out with all of them in one click, just like how other very popular shopping apps, Amazon, work. And it's just going to be a total game changer. They've seen massive, unprecedented, unimaginable growth over the last quarter. And it's really exciting to see all of you guys who are small business owners in any capacity add your businesses to Public Square as well, which you can also do using the link that I just dropped in our live chat. So congratulations, Public Square. We are so excited for you and so excited to continue supporting all of the businesses on your platform. You guys have been messaging me a lot over the past few days, and I've been getting tons of DMs on Instagram and comments on Instagram asking for us to cover on the stream the subject that we are going to be unpacking today, and that is the ongoing conflict happening right now between ethnic Armenian Christians and the government of Azerbaijan. This has obviously gone on for a very, very long time with disputed land territories in the area, and we're going to cover a little bit of the history of that today, but just very recently has involved the displacement of ethnic Armenian Christians from their homes in an area that's currently under the control of Azerbaijan. 100,000 of them have been forced to flee their homes. They've faced starvation. They've faced imprisonment from the government and many, many other horrible atrocities that the media, for whatever reason, is refusing to cover. Like very, very few people are actually writing about this. Pretty much nobody is talking about it on the air because our news cycle is being dominated by another religious conflict, unfortunately, in Israel and in Gaza this week. So this is a severely underreported story. I'm hoping that it draws attention and light to a horrific tragedy that Christians are experiencing that nobody seems to want to pay attention to. And although it is a very heavy subject, I think it's highly important that we continue to cover stories like this and put pressure on our friends and our colleagues in the media with even bigger platforms than we have to be drawing attention to this so that the world can adequately respond and so that we can join together in our prayers to stop religious violence, period. Whether it is somebody infiltrating Israel's border as a terrorist for Hamas, or whether it is displacement of ethnic and religious Christians because of their faith. It is all across the board severely terrible, and the world needs to join together and find the humanity in one another now more than ever before. I'm going to say hi to some people in our chat very quick, and then we are going to jump right in. Don't forget, if you guys are just now joining us, to hit the like button on this stream. That might look like a little thumbs up or a little heart. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so that you always know when we are going live and when we have a new video upload coming to you. And most importantly, smash that follow or subscribe button wherever you are watching, on YouTube, on Rumble, on Getter, on Facebook. Locals, you're already following. That's kind of how it works. But so that we can continue growing these channels. You guys have been so helpful for that on YouTube, especially the last few weeks, and on Rumble as well. So thank you guys all so much for liking, for commenting, for sharing, and of course, following and subscribing. Let's start over on Rumble today. We've got Sarah tuning into her first live stream. Hey, Sarah, it's so nice to meet you. TJ is tuning in from Washington. Thank you for following along. We appreciate you. John is watching in Utah. We've got Furlip watching from England. Very cool. We love England. I hope to visit you across the pond sometime very, very soon. TZ Patriot is tuning in over on Getter. We've got Nitty Witty, made in New York City, Gary Upchurch, the beggar in black, and many, many more. And on YouTube, Total Package is kicking us off in the chat. We love to see it. Brown Rice, Leon Constantine. We've got Jordan watching. Obadiah and OD are here. So glad to see you guys again. Brenda, I'm doing great. How are you? It's glad to see your name pop up in here. We've got Khalil and Josh tuning in. Mighty and Kobe are watching. Church is here. We love to see it. My mom is watching. Hi, Mom. I love giving you a fun shout out for that. Hamed is tuning in, and many, many more. And over on Locals, Becca, Alex, Crazy Cat Lady, Johnny, Tito, Mountain Lover, and the rest of the gang. Love you guys so much. Glad you are all here and tuning in. As I mentioned, I'd been getting literally countless requests from you guys to cover this story, and I will be the first to admit, sadly, I personally didn't know much about what was going on. I have always been aware that there was a genocide against Christians in Armenia, that was a very, very pivotal moment for how the world was affected by and how we approached the topic of genocide. Fun fact, the Armenian genocide that happened in, I guess it's not fun, but interesting fact, The Armenian genocide that happened in 1915 and 1916 actually was the precursor for the world starting to use the word genocide. It was never codified in international law before the Armenian genocide in 1915 through 1916. So this was a very pivotal moment in world history many, many, many years ago, over 100 years ago. But interestingly, I didn't really know much about what was going on the ground right now. I'd seen a few headlines scrolling through social media, but never really had the story unpacked for me until I started doing a little bit more research about this topic at your request to cover this on the stream. So if you are walking into the stream and you're like, I have literally no idea what is going on, I didn't even know that there was this huge refugee crisis or this huge displacement of Christians from their homes right now. I had no idea that there is a threat of genocide for Christians in this particular area of the world. That's completely fine. You are not alone in feeling that way because most people are completely unaware this problem is even happening, because our media is giving very little to no attention to this whatsoever. So what I want to kind of just start with is tell you what the heck is going on at this very moment. We're going to back up, cover a little bit of the history, and then we're going to unpack what you need to know about what's happening today and where we can all individually lend a hand to try to help, even if it's just amplifying the message that this is happening and drawing attention to it. I will be the first to admit I am not an expert on all of the conflict here. I am not a historian with a PhD on this issue, but I am someone who is hugely passionate about freedom of religion and freedom of expression. I talk about it all the time from an American point of view in all of our content. And as a Christian, as a practicing Catholic, I am hugely concerned by seeing the massive efforts to persecute Christianity, which is, by the way, the most persecuted religion on the face of the planet today. I'm hugely concerned by how that is ramping up based on the sheer numbers alone and how severe that persecution is starting to look in the 2020s. If you guys didn't already know this, maybe you haven't heard of an organization called For the Martyrs, or my friend Gia Chacon, who often joins us on the stream to talk about this issue. Christianity is actually the number one, from a sheer numbers perspective, persecuted religion on the face of the planet. Christianity. More Christians face imprisonment, face torture, face displacement from their homes, or even face violent death than any other religious group on the face of the planet today. Especially if you live in a majority Christian nation like the United States, that might be a really surprising or shocking statistic to hear. Because in American culture and in Western culture today, we have all kinds of labels and all kinds of microaggressions and all kinds of accusations, some rightfully so. And we've seen a lot of rightful accusations of anti-Semitism, for example, or even Islamophobia in the last few weeks. But we don't even really have a word for what it would look like to practice something like Islamophobia or something like anti-Semitism for Christians, because it hasn't really been a problem in our country's history. I say really up until now, because now we're starting to see persecution come into the light for American Christians who are practicing their faith, particularly Catholics who are practicing their faith. But around the world, Christianity is the single most dangerous religion to be practicing today in 2023. In North Korea, for example, if you profess your faith as a Christian, you will spend your life in a labor camp as punishment for doing that. In Iran, if you convert to Christianity, it is an immediate under law death sentence. You will be executed for converting to Christianity. In Nigeria, if you go to church, if you want to practice your faith with other believers in God, that means risking a massacre of yourself, of your friends and family, and of the people gathered to worship with you. In China, the true Christian church, not the church edited by the CCP with highly edited and redacted Bibles, the true Christian church has gone underground because you really don't have freedom of religion under communism and totalitarianism. Shocking, I know. Information we definitely should be covering more. And even in the West, anti-Christian sentiment is massively on the rise. In over 50 countries around the world, 50 countries, it is outright dangerous to practice your faith as a Christian. You will face imprisonment, you will face arrest, you could face torture, you could face violence, by state or non-state actors, and you certainly could face martyrdom or death for practicing your faith, which is something that we often think about or read about in the early church, or we think about the saints and how they lived their life under constant persecution for their faith before before Christianity, I should say, was legalized in the Roman Empire under Emperor Constantine. But we often don't think about what martyrdom or death or torture for your faith looks like today. But millions upon millions of people are experiencing this on a daily basis. And hundreds of thousands of those people are experiencing this right now in a disputed area between Armenia and Azerbaijan that is called the Nagorno-Karabakh area. And so I want to show you this region on a map because I think it helps to put things into context a little bit. We are talking about an area that's actually not too far away from what we are seeing in Israel and Gaza this week, but we're talking about this orange little pocket that over the last several decades, if not centuries, has been disputed territory between Armenia and between Azerbaijan. This Nagorno-Karabakh district, this region, is barely connected with Armenia. You can see right there's like a little land bridge. And that area right now is being patrolled by Russian peacekeeping troops. It's very complicated. There is so many layers to this conflict that we couldn't even possibly begin to try to unpack all of it on the stream today. But people who live in this little dark orange circle within the borders of Azerbaijan are ethnically Armenian. And if you don't know much about the history of the country Armenia, I bet you also didn't know that Armenia was actually the first Christian nation in the world. Armenia was the first country in the entire world to adopt Christianity as a state religion in the year 301 AD. And ever since then, to be ethnically Armenian means your history, your story, your ethnicity, and your heritage as a member of the Armenian region has also been directly linked to your faith as a Christian. And Christianity has played a hugely important role in shaping the culture and the history of the Armenian people for almost 2,000 years, really since the early Christian church, before it was even legal in any other country around the world. Religion and Christianity, therefore, has been an essential part of what it means to be ethnically Armenian, and has shaped the course of history over the past several thousand, not even 100, but 1,000 years. Unfortunately, because of ongoing land disputes, the people who live in this dark orange circle, who are ethnically Armenian and therefore are linked directly to the history of Christianity, they are practicing Christians, have had an ongoing fight to practice their faith and to freely exist as people within the nation of the borders of Azerbaijan for a very, very, very long time. And this has gone back and forth to look like various conflicts and various genocides, various disputes, various bouts of violence for literally hundreds of years, when we wouldn't even necessarily call those countries those countries. This goes back a very, very long time. But right now, in early October, starting late September through early October, there have been more than 100,000 people, 100,000 Christians who have had to flee that dark orange circle, that dark orange area, flee their homeland because of fear of genocide, because of ongoing violence from the government, and because of displacement from their homes due to an ongoing military blockade that was preventing these people from getting in or out, preventing food from getting in or out of that region, preventing medical resources or any other supplies that are desperately needed for people to survive in and out of this region. Quite literally, more than 80% of the people who live in this little dark orange area that Armenia claims belongs to them, these are ethnic Armenians, and Azerbaijan claims belongs to them, and now Russia is trying to go back and forth solving the dispute for this. And we'll talk about the war that just happened in 2020 here in just a minute as to why the borders look like this now. But 80% of the people who live in that dark orange region have fled their homes for fear of genocide. Importantly, this dark orange bloc operates independently from the government of Azerbaijan. They have their own quasi-government within their own region. They are completely autonomous. They have not submitted to the authority of the Azerbaijani government. Instead, they are completely self-sufficient and have their own government. But even having their own government, even being autonomous, so much persecution has come to fruition for these 120,000 residents that they have had to flee after invasions by Azerbaijan. This is recognized internationally as sovereign territory. They are completely sovereign individuals. They operate autonomously from the government and the country that surrounds them. But there have been assaults. There have been cutoffs of supplies of food. There has been religious violence. There have been so many arrests that now the fear of genocide has caused more than 100,000 people as of late September, so a few weeks ago, to flee, according to Armenian officials and the United Nations. Also in that enclave, in that dark orange area on the map, are 400 holy sites of the early Christian church that have existed for 2,000 years, quite literally since the beginning of the church, what you read about in your New Testament, or even if you're not Christian, just as a history buff perspective, fascinating, historical, important artifacts and sites of significance that deserve to exist. And those 400 holy sites are now at complete risk of erasure. The UN and other expert groups are stating that 99.9% of these Armenians are going to cross the border into Armenia, even though this is their regional homeland. Their families have gone back for generations upon generations upon generations in this little orange area. And people are expecting that most of these 400 holy sites are probably going to be completely destroyed in the name of outlawing religious practices because of the Azerbaijan government. I know that's a lot of information to throw at you all at once, and we're going to talk about how we got here, but I'm curious, chat, did you even know this was happening? Because I didn't really. I'd seen a handful of headlines about this. I'd seen a handful of people post about this on social media, but especially in the midst of other religious violence and persecution happening around the world, I didn't know that the conflict was this bad. I didn't know that 100,000 innocent people were fleeing their homes because of the overt and imminent fear of genocide. We're throwing that word around a lot this week, and rightfully so. We should be paying so much attention to what's happening in Israel and the barbaric, demonic terrorism perpetrated by terrorist groups like Hamas and probably imminently Hezbollah and the Taliban and others. But I didn't know. I didn't know this was happening. I wasn't seeing any news source cover this. I wasn't seeing mass posts on social media standing in solidarity with these people who have been displaced from their homes and who are facing imminent violence because of their ethnicity and their religion. I had no idea. And I'm seeing countless comments in our chat right now on Rumble, on Getter, on Locals, and on YouTube. Everyone saying, no, no, no. I had no idea that this was happening. So thank you to those who did, who are asking us to cover this on the stream today. But the history of conflict in this area goes back quite literally thousands of years since Christianity became legalized in Armenia as the first Christian nation in the entire world. And obviously, with ongoing religious tension all over the world, things have escalated quite significantly within the past few hundred and the past several decades when we look at years on the calendar. But I want us to go all the way back for a second before I tell you how we got here to this point where 100,000 people have fled their homes because they fear, rightfully so, imminent fear of genocide. I want us to talk about the last time genocide happened for the Armenian people and how we even got that word genocide because of this particular conflict. The United States Holocaust Memorial and Museum, which if you guys have not been in Washington, D.C., is very, very moving. I've been extremely fortunate to visit many Holocaust sites around the world. I've had a huge that's not the right word, but affinity for learning about the Holocaust for a very long time. But the Holocaust with a capital T and a capital H is not the only Holocaust or genocide that has happened throughout history. And if you visit the United States Holocaust Museum, Yes, you will learn about the Holocaust as it applies to the Nazis and World War II, but you'll also learn about religious violence in Southeast Asia. You will certainly learn about the Armenian genocide, and it's a really fascinating way to just put a bunch of pieces together about religious violence and ethnic violence around the world that you might otherwise never have the opportunity to experience and tangibly touch, especially in relation to Israel this week. I could not encourage more that you go visit the Holocaust Museum if you have the capacity to and you never have before. Certainly, if it ever permits in your life, I highly, highly recommend you go and visit Auschwitz and Dachau, both of which I have visited, one in Poland, one in Germany, and there are other concentration camps that you can visit as well. But to actually experience Auschwitz and to see where the train brought people in, to stand there in the freezing cold with snow seeping through your shoes, and to stand in the gas chambers where people were killed is a very humbling and very overwhelming experience that I don't think a museum can quite give a full appreciation of, other than actually experiencing it yourself. But the closest I've ever felt to what I felt in Auschwitz was actually at Yad Vashem, which is the world's largest Holocaust memorial and museum in Jerusalem in Israel, which I've been incredibly fortunate to visit as well. But if you have the opportunity to ever go visit the United States Holocaust Museum, if you live here in the US and you haven't had a chance to go, it is a very sombering experience. It definitely is extremely emotionally moving. I recommend that you take your kids. A lot of people probably wouldn't, but I think it's important for children to learn about this. I was 16 when I visited Auschwitz, and it has had a profound impact on my life. They have an entire exhibit about the Armenian genocide at the U.S. Holocaust Museum, and they write very frequently about it on their website to try to educate people about what happened from 1915 to 1916. And interestingly, we call this the first genocide of the 20th century. We actually got the word genocide and its codification into international law because of the Armenian genocide after 1916. And we'll cover that in just a second. But what we're talking about when we say the Armenian genocide is the physical annihilation of Armenian Christians. Interesting. We often don't hear the word genocide and Christian side by side, and I wonder why our media does that. Living in the Ottoman Empire from spring 1915 through autumn 1916. This was long before there were ever names like Azerbaijan or different governments. This was just the Ottoman Empire at the time. There were approximately 1.5 million Armenians living in the multi-ethnic Ottoman Empire in 1915, at least 664,000, and possibly as many as 1.2 million out of 1.5 million died during this genocide. Think about just that scale for a moment. Up to 1.2 out of 1.5 million ethnic Christian Armenians were slaughtered during the Armenian genocide. And that happened for a variety of reasons, in massacres or in individual killings, or many of them succumbed to death because of ill treatment, exposure to the elements, or even starvation, which is exactly what we are seeing right now for these Armenians who are fleeing their homes for the nation of Armenia right now. The origin of the term genocide and its codification in international law have their roots in the mass murder of Armenians from 1915 to 1916. It was a lawyer named Raphael Lemkin who coined the word and later was the champion of codifying genocide under international law at the UN. He repeatedly stated that early exposure to newspaper stories about Ottoman crimes against Armenians was key to his beliefs about the need for legal protection of groups, which was a core element in the UN Genocide Convention of 1948, making sure that no group could be slaughtered at will simply because of their identity. That's what we would call genocide today. Ottoman authorities, supported by auxiliary troops and at times by civilians, reminds you a lot of the Holocaust in reference to World War II and the Nazis, perpetrated most of the persecution and mass killings. What they were trying to do was solidify Muslim Turkish dominance in the Ottoman Empire, particularly in the regions of Central and Eastern Anatolia. Go look up historical maps if you don't remember your world history class. I last took world history in freshman year of high school, so it's been a long time. By eliminating the sizable Armenian presence there, mass atrocities and genocide are often perpetrated within the context of war, and the destruction of Armenians was closely linked to the events of World War I. I want to just say full stop there, because that is exactly what we are starting to see today. Essentially, since 2020, there has been this ongoing land dispute and ongoing war, for lack of a better term, over who gets rights to this dark orange area? Who has control over this dark orange area? And no one was really able to answer that question until there was a 44-day war in 2020 where Azerbaijan retook this territory from Armenia, and around that enclave after a second war that ended in a Russian-broked ceasefire. So as I just mentioned, Russia right now, Russian peacekeeping troops are ensuring that road transportation between the gray and between the dark orange remains open. But very, very recently, that was not the case. And in the last several months and weeks, Azerbaijan has actually cut off that road from being accessible one way or another. Nobody in, nobody out. The road links have been blockaded since last December by civilians who are Azerbaijani, identifying themselves as ecological activists, saying that they are fighting for climate change and for the earth, to block off this road so that no cars could give off emissions, when in reality they were trying to block people from getting out and block food, medical supplies, and resources from getting in for these ethnic Armenians now living in a surrounded by Azerbaijan disputed territory that Russia was preventing people from blocking that road for. Interestingly, when that happened in December, Russian peacekeepers chose not to intervene. They just said, fine, you can blockade the road. In April, they installed an official checkpoint along that road. So this happened several months ago, tightening that blockade. And Russia is allegedly working with the UN to try to get everything opened. But what that actually led to with that blockade was a disastrous choking of supplies, meaning that all of these ethnic Armenians fear imminent fear of genocide, not necessarily just because of violent slaughter and massacre for their ethnicity and for their religious beliefs, which is certainly a fear that they have, but also because it was essentially impossible for any of these 100,000 plus people to access food, medicine, or other essential supplies because this blockade has existed for 9+ months. We are in the 10th month of this official blockade since the actual checkpoint was put up by the Azerbaijani government. The UN Security Council talked about this last month. Of course, they're a little busy doing some other things this week as well, but an international criminal court prosecutor, an ICC prosecutor, said that the blockade does amount to genocide of the local Armenian population, and that the lawyers for the nation of Azerbaijan said that that was unsubstantiated and inaccurate. So apparently everybody at the UN and all of the powers that be have known that there is just a literal genocide happening right now around the world, not the one that you're seeing on the news, which is also terrible and deserves all of our attention. But how come nobody was willing to talk about this? It honestly blows my mind that we had no idea this was happening for 100,000 plus people. How is that possible? Christianity Today reported that because of the blockade, these people were experiencing near starvation conditions, with humanitarian aid allowed entry 1 day prior. That was it to the Azerbaijani offensive. The government then issued a decree to dissolve itself as of January 1st, ceding control of a territory it declared independent after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. This government being the autonomous government just overseeing the people who live in this dark orange region. So they can't do anything to actually help and provide for their own citizens. As for the history of this, I do think it's important. The nation of Armenia and Armenians controlled this dark orange region since 1994. After a 3-year war resulted in the deaths of 30,000 people and displaced an additional 100,000 between Armenia and Azerbaijan. That ended up coming back to fruition in 2020 when that 44-day war I mentioned resulted in Azerbaijan reclaiming control of this dark orange area that Armenia had sovereignty over before, and 7,000 people were killed in that 44-day war in 2020 before the Russian ceasefire where they agreed to be the peacekeeping troops that haven't really kept the peace, shocker, almost 4 years ago now, which is very scary. Azerbaijan has promised that Armenians in the territory will be integrated as full citizens with equal rights, which they don't want. They don't want to be citizens of Azerbaijan, joining other non-Azeri ethnicities, which comprise 8% of the population in the Shiite majority nation with a substantial Sunni minority. Well over 90% of people in Azerbaijan are Muslim when they practice their religion. The small Christian community generally reports overall freedom of religion. The European Parliament and minority rights group, however, have stated that Azerbaijan's ethnicities suffer massive discrimination, particularly these Armenians, ethnic Armenians, fear much worse. And if you look at how we report ethnic and religious persecution within the nation of Azerbaijan, the United States government and the State Department has a massive report on religious freedom in the nation. I highly suggest you check it out, and I'll drop the link in our chat. That local human rights groups and others within the nation say that the government of Azerbaijan continues to physically abuse, temporarily hold incommunicado, arrest, or even imprison overt religious activists. You are forbidden from sharing your religion with other individuals in the nation. You are forbidden from freely worshiping. There was a group of Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, that was arrested and subject to horrible conditions and horrible treatment for openly worshiping God and having a religious celebration in their private home, not even in public. And the government prides itself in Azerbaijan of stating the equality of all religions before the law. But in reality, there's a religious freedom law in the country that says government may dissolve any religious organization if they cause racial, national, religious, or social animosity. Well, gee, if that doesn't encompass every single religion on the face of the earth, or if you proselytize in a way that supposedly degrades human dignity, who gets to decide that? The government at will, or hinders secular education. So there really is no freedom of religion under law in Azerbaijan, particularly if you are a Christian, and you will be arrested, you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and you may even face violence or additional torture, or maybe even death for your crime of freely practicing your religion. As for how this is going to unfold moving forward, nobody really knows. But what I want us to focus on is the individual stories of humanity here and finding the humanity for the people who have been displaced, the same way that we are doing this for the Israelis who had their homes infiltrated by terrorists and who faced genocide themselves this past week, the same way that we are trying to find the humanity in the children and the hostages that Hamas is using as human shields and as talking points and propaganda in the media. Time magazine reported on this at the end of September. I can't find the exact date of when this came out. Oh no, they republished this October 12th, so just a few days ago, that these men, women, and children who are completely terrified for their lives have left behind entire worlds, their schools and shops, their fields, flocks, and vineyards, the cemeteries of their ancestors. These are people who have lived in this region for 12, 13, 14, 15 generations. They also left behind the churches, large and small, ancient and more modern, magnificent and modest, where they had for centuries gathered together and prayed. They also left behind bridges, fortifications, early modern mansions, and Soviet-era monuments such as the beloved We Are Our Mountains statues. What will happen now to those places? There's no question, actually. We know well what happened in other instances of violence against Armenians. A spectacular landscape of 16th century Armenian tombstones was erased from the face of the earth by Azerbaijan over a period of years. We know what happened to the Church of the Mother of God and the Armenian cemetery in a different village. Both were completely scrubbed from the landscape using earth-moving equipment like bulldozers. And we know what happened to a different cathedral in Shushi, which was in turn shelled, vandalized with graffiti, restored without any reference to its Armenian heritage, and now rebranded as a Christian temple, but without any link to the Orthodox Church for which Armenian Christians belong to, the Eastern Orthodox Church. The brazenness of these actions, as a journalist wrote in May of 2021, suggests a growing confidence that the people who take over can remake their newly retaken territories in whatever image they want. In other words, you can rewrite history just because you are the people in power and you are the people with the biggest weapons who are able to change things however you want at whim. The annihilation of millennia of Armenian life in this region was enabled by the inaction and seeming indifference of those who might have prevented it. The United States and the European Union speak loftily of universal human rights, but did nothing for 9 months while the people of this dark orange region, keep thinking about this on a map, were denied food, medicine, fuel, and other vital supplies. They did nothing to enforce the order of the International Court of Justice, demanding back in February of 2023 that Azerbaijan end its blockade. Their inaction clearly emboldened Azerbaijan to attack, just as it will encourage others to do the same elsewhere. Could not have said that better myself. If we're going to get involved in protecting human rights in some places around the world, but not in other places around the world, i.e. places that make us look really good on a newspaper and that maybe don't need endless blank checks of billions of dollars, I think you know what I'm talking about. But then we draw a complete blind eye to what's happening to innocent Christians who are being forced to provide. That instead they're just giving to Hamas, by the way. That's where their priorities are lying right now. And we have countless resources to provide that instead we're just giving to one country over and over and over again in the form of blank checks. We don't really care about human rights. We don't really care about freedom of religion or freedom of expression. Spoiler, I hate to break that to you, but we're just empty talking heads on televisions to most people who are dealing with the most unimaginable atrocities and persecution that we could never intimately relate to because we are so privileged. Time magazine went on to say, it's important to understand the stakes of this kind of cultural erasure. These monuments and stones testify to the generations of Armenians who worshipped in and cared about them. To destroy them is to erase not only a culture, but a people. As art historian Barry Flood observed in 2016 about the destruction of cultural heritage by ISIS since 2014, the physical destruction of communal connective tissues, the archives, artifacts, and monuments in which complex micro-histories were instantiated, means that there are now things about these pasts that cannot and never will be known. Powerful. If history is any indication, ethnic cleansing tends to be followed by all kinds of cultural destruction, from vandalism to complete effacement of the landscape. The latter tactic will be used with smaller, lesser-known churches. It will be a sinister way to remove less famous Armenian monuments, which will serve the narrative that there were no Armenians there in the early modern period to begin with. Falsification will also occur. What did I just say about history? Those with the most power have the opportunity to rewrite it for better or worse, in which Armenian monuments are provided with newly created histories and contexts. The 13th century monasteries in particular regions, both magnificent and characteristic examples of medieval Armenian architecture, have already been rebranded as ancient Caucasian Albanian temples. Great. Expect these and other sites to become venues for conferences and workshops to highlight ancient Caucasian Albanian culture. Not what that was for. As for the countless Armenian inscriptions on these buildings and tombstones, these, the president of Azerbaijan has already announced, are nothing but forgeries. They don't actually mean anything, and there's no cultural, historical significance because Christians happened to make them, and they will be restored to their original appearance, presumably through sandblasting or removing of Armenian inscribed stones, as was done in the 1980s. Finally, there will be a celebration of multiculturalism, because that's exactly what we do. Those who lie, sadly, will appear to be telling the truth and vice versa. There will be a celebration of multiculturalism in Azerbaijan. Come to Karabakh, the home of the ancient Christians, people will say. Please ignore the gouged out letters on that stone wall, for it is not an Armenian inscription. There were never Armenians here, except for soldiers and invaders like the ones depicted in a reprehensible museum in Baku, featuring waxen figures of dead Armenian soldiers, a sight so dehumanizing that an international human rights organization cried out for its closure. This is how cultural genocide plays out. A little more than 100 years ago was the Armenian genocide waged by the Ottoman Empire, followed by large-scale looting, vandalization, and the destruction of Armenian sites across what is now modern-day Turkey. The prospect of a second cultural genocide is now on the table, except now Armenians will watch the spectacle unfold online, which sounds harrowingly familiar to what we've all been doing with regard to Israel in the last few days, enduring the trauma site by site and moment by moment. The Pope has been extremely outspoken in the last few days, calling attention to this humanitarian crisis. In the last few months, he's actually been very attentive to this, which I'm quite happy to see. Vatican News was reporting that Pope Francis is recalling this crisis very frequently and the serious humanitarian conditions affecting the displaced. He also specifically called for the protection of monasteries and places of worship for the purpose of cultural significance and history of the church around the world. Again, more than 100,000 refugees have fled since September 23rd. This is unfolding in real time, and the region is only home to a few more people than that. So 99.9% of these people will have fled their homes. The UN is working to deliver life-saving assistance and supplies. Yeah, not if they can provide the supplies to Hamas instead, apparently, right now, this week. So there you go. The Pope also added a special appeal for the protection of monasteries and places of worship in the region. He expressed his hopes that they can be respected and protected as a part of the local culture, expressions of faith, and a sign of fraternity that makes it possible to live together despite our differences. That's really what this all is about at the end of the day. Our world is becoming exceptionally more complicated with every passing day, and the inability of people to see the humanity in one another, to see one another as people designed in God's image, people who are a reflection of God's love for us, in an attempt and an effort to try to prove your own supremacy or try to erase people who are different from you off the face of the planet. That's really the crux of everything that we are seeing when it comes to the violence that's erupting all over the world today, this week, this month, this year, and moving forward. It's exactly what drove Hamas, radical, violent, demonic, because I couldn't even say inhumane or animalistic. Animals don't even treat each other this way, but demonic terrorists to breach the border of Israel and slaughter innocent babies and families alive, to burn them alive, to behead them, to rape women in front of their deceased husbands, and to take innocent hostages back as bargaining chips for international media to try to prove your legitimacy as a government when you are in fact a terrorist organization. It's what's driving the government of Azerbaijan to literally starve to death and deprave resources from ethnic Armenians because they happen to be Christian, and you aren't okay with true religious freedom happening within your borders so long as the government can't be involved in it. It's what's happening with the slaughter and displacement of Christians in North Korea, in China, in Iran, in Nigeria, and all around the world. It's what's driving our own government in the United States of America to infiltrate Catholic churches and start spying on Catholics for practicing our faith, labeling us under law in the intelligence community as radical traditionalists and these domestic extremists that pose a threat to the United States government. As we continue to see violence like this unfold, I think it's really, really easy to want to be angry, to be really angry, to have this level of confusion and hurt and negativity overtake you, to lose hope for anything better, because this seems to be just like fire over here, fire over here, fire over here, explosion over here. There's just like the whole world seems to be ablaze with this evil and hatred and barbaric terrorism that the world has really never seen before. But that's not the response that I think is appropriate or the response that I think we should have. In fact, it's a lot harder, but it's a lot more meaningful to try to find the humanity in one another again instead, and to remind ourselves that nothing is impossible with God. Literally, nothing is impossible with God. I watched a post go pretty viral from PragerU the last few days, and they've done some really great reporting on everything that's happening around the world this week, but they had a post from an individual who had made a PragerU video. I'll see if I can try to pull it up for you guys. Somebody who was originally going, here it is, to sign up for a terrorist organization. They wanted to join a terrorist training camp and instead was able to find God in the process. And as a result of that post, I ended up seeing countless other posts of former ISIS fighters, of a Hezbollah fighter who found God, who found Jesus Christ and converted their whole life and now is trying to speak out against these things. And I think we view stories like this and these radical conversions as impossible because people think no one in their right mind would be able to experience that kind of a radical transformation of their heart. Nobody could go from being an ISIS fighter to being a follower of Christ or somebody who sees the humanity in one another in their future life. But this is happening all over the world, and it is all of the reasons to have hope and more, because nothing is impossible. This video from PragerU was so fascinating, and they put the transcript up on their Instagram the other day from a very, very powerful individual. It says, "I was born to hate Jews. It was part of my life. I never questioned it. I was not born in Iran or Syria. I was born in England. My parents moved there from Pakistan. Theirs was the typical immigrant story, moved to the West in the hope of making a better life for themselves and their children. We were a devout Muslim family, but not extremist or radical in any way. We only wished the best for everyone except the Jews. The Jews, we believed, were aliens living in stolen Muslim land, occupiers who were engaged in a genocide against the Palestinian people. Our hatred, therefore, was justified and righteous, and it made me and my friends vulnerable to the arguments of radical extremists. If the Jews were as evil as we had always believed, mustn't those who support them, Christians, Americans, and others in the West, be just as evil? Beginning in the 1990s, speakers and teachers at mosques and in schools began to endlessly repeat this theme. We were not Western. We were not British. We were Muslims first and only. Our loyalty was to our religion and to our fellow Muslims. We owed nothing to the Western nations that welcomed us. As Westerners, they were our enemies. All of this had its desired effect. At least it did on me. It changed the way that I saw the world. I began to see the suffering of Muslims, including in Britain, as the fault of Western imperialism. The West was at war with us, and the Jews controlled the West. My experience at university in Britain only enhanced my increasingly radical beliefs. Hating Israel was a badge of honor. Stage an anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian rally, and you were sure to draw in a large, approving crowd. While at university, I decided the protests and propaganda against Israel were not enough. True jihad demanded violence. So I made a plan to join the real fight. I would leave college and join a terrorist training camp in Pakistan. But fortunately for me, fate intervened in a bookstore. I came across a book called The Case for Israel by Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz. The Case for Israel? What case could there be? The title itself made me furious, and I began to read the pages almost as an act of defiance. How ill-informed, how stupid could this guy be to defend the indefensible? Well, he was a Jew. That had to be the answer. Still, I read, and what I read challenged all of my dogmas about Israel and the Jews. I read that it wasn't Israel who created the Palestinian refugee crisis. It was the Arab countries, the United Nations, and the corrupt Palestinian leadership. I read that the Jews didn't exploit the Holocaust to create the modern state of Israel. The movement to create a modern Jewish state dated back to the 19th century and ultimately to the beginnings of the Jewish people almost 4,000 years ago. And I read that Israel is not engaged in genocide against the Palestinians. On the contrary, the Palestinian population has actually doubled in just 20 years. All this did was make me angrier. I needed to prove Dershowitz wrong, to see with my own eyes how racist and oppressive Israel really was. So I bought a plane ticket. I would travel to Israel, the home of my enemy, and that's when everything changed. Everything. What I saw with my own eyes was even more challenging than what Dershowitz had written. Instead of apartheid, I saw Muslims, Christians, and Jews coexisting. Instead of hate, I saw acceptance, even compassion. I saw a raucous, modern, liberal democracy, full of flaws, certainly, but fundamentally decent. I saw a country that wanted nothing more than to live in peace with its neighbors. I saw my hatred melting before my eyes. I knew right then what I had to do. Too many people on this planet are consumed with the same hatred that consumed me. They have been taught to despise the Jewish state, many Muslims by their religion, many others by their college professors or student groups. So here is my challenge to anyone who feels this way. Do what I did. Seek out the truth for yourself. If the truth can change me, it can change anyone. This individual, whose name is Qasim, here I'll roll this up. Qasim Hafiz is the deputy director of Christians United for Israel today. He's the host of the Christians United for Israel weekly podcast. He calls himself a coffee drinker, a sports fan, a Zionist, and a whole lot more. And you can see his profile picture is him standing in front of the Western Wall, where Jews go to pray in the old city of Jerusalem. It's the closest site to where the original temple stood, and you can see the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque above him there in the background as well, right there, smack dab in the heart of Jerusalem. Somebody who wanted to join a Palestinian driven, because of Palestinian violence, he had presumed, Pakistani-based terrorist training camp, is now the deputy director for messaging of Christians United for Israel. Now hosts the Christians United for Israel weekly podcast. And I saw many other videos go super viral this week of people who were former militant fighters for ISIS or for Hezbollah, who in the midst of the most insane demonic darkness possible converted to Christianity, had a radical transformation of their heart, and who now are speaking out against the violence of terrorism. These things are possible if we are willing to believe that they are possible, and if we are willing to hit our knees and realize that there is no way, any shape or form, that the world can do this on our own. If we try to do it on our own, look at what's truly happening. Genocide after genocide after genocide, war after war after war, violence after violence after violence. We cannot do this by ourselves. We certainly don't even have the media attention to draw attention to all of the things that are happening around the world by ourselves. But with God, nothing is impossible. And the more we are willing to speak the truth into our messed up, upside down world, the more we are willing to be the light in the darkness, and the more we are willing to amplify the voices of the people who don't have a microphone, like those displaced Armenians who are dealing with true genocide today, the more we can continue to make an actual difference in the world. Because the truth is, at the end of the day, reacting to stupid TikTok videos, yeah, it's important. Like, it does matter. It matters in changing culture at large. Making funny, stupid viral videos, doing man on the street interviews from protests or whatever. Yes, it matters. It's important because we change culture at large. But we have so much more of an obligation to help change the world, not to get somebody elected, not to have a bill that we like pass in Congress, not to crap on somebody because they disagree with you on Twitter and get a bunch of retweets and go viral by owning the libs or whatever. Like, sure, those things can sometimes matter, not always, in my opinion, but you have an opportunity and an obligation. And I think this week has been more of an example than that than anything else in my career up until this point, for something so much bigger than that. If you have found yourself feeling defensive or angry because your political beliefs seem to feel more important than finding the humanity in other people this week, it's time for a reality check. If you find yourself scrolling through post after post after post after post, or headline after headline of stupid crap like a man winning Woman of the Year awards, which absolutely we should draw attention to, but you had absolutely no idea that this was happening this week, try to follow different people. Try to get more information. Try to find more meaningful ways to use your screen time for good, for productive change in the world. If you have found yourself feeling angry and whipping your phone out to blast tweet somebody that you disagree with, instead of hitting your knees and praying for an end to violence and a return of humanity around the world today, it's time for a hard reset. Hit your knees, pray. Because nothing is impossible with God, truly. My heart is so broken, and my prayers are with everybody who has experienced this type of religiously driven violence this week. It's almost impossible to comprehend how truly unimaginable everything going on around the world is. I continue to be completely devastated by the violence against Israel and by Hamas against the innocent hostages and people in the borders of Gaza. But I think we have hope. And I'm seeing way too many people call this a hopeless situation, call this an inevitable result of hatred and violence that's been going on forever. Just because we've done something the same way forever doesn't mean we have to do things the same way moving forward. And we have the opportunity to get to know one another, to pray for one another, to find humanity in one another today at a degree that I don't think it's mattered ever before in human history. It's only going to get crazier in the world that we live in. We know that. We believe that. Because at some point, God's got to come back. Or if you're Jewish, you might believe that God has to come. The Messiah has to come. He's going to come back. Are we going to be ready for an eternal Jerusalem? I don't find it coincidental at all, by the way, that heaven is referred to as an eternal Jerusalem after the Messiah's second coming. Or are we going to keep doing things the way that humanity has always done them just because we're running in the hamster wheel of evil that governs our world? The answer is up to us. All right, you guys, I know I didn't interact with the chat a lot during this stream. I hope you guys were able to learn something new and drop some questions. I'll go back and read them to make sure I can answer anything tomorrow. I was just kind of on a roll, had to get the information out to you, and that was important. I am going to drop this State Department report on religious freedom practices in Azerbaijan, as I promised, because I think it's really interesting and I hope that you guys would learn something from it. It's like 50 pages long, and by no means feel like you have to read all of this, but if you're curious at all what's happening in their country when it comes to religious freedom or in other countries around the world, that's a really great resource for you to learn more about the generalized history of what's happened in the last several years in Azerbaijan. Please join me in praying, particularly for these Armenians who have been displaced from their homes and who are facing violence and death, but also for the ongoing conflict in Israel. Please join me in praying for an end to violence. Join me in praying for finding the humanity in one another and for Jewish individuals all over the world who are fearing for their lives this week as violence continues to heat up all over the globe. It's looking pretty crazy out there right now, but we have the opportunity to hold hands with one another. That sounds so like sing Kumbaya and coexist, but it is true. Like it is objectively true. And to fight for one another and fight for our humanity. Again, the cardinal of the Roman Catholic Church in Jerusalem. I say that because the Orthodox Church and the Western Roman Catholic Church very much coexist in Jerusalem, but a cardinal for the Roman Catholic Church in Jerusalem asked that today be a worldwide day of fasting and of prayer. If you didn't already fast today, that's totally okay, but if you haven't prayed already yet today, there is a whole worldwide community that is doing just that to try to end violence around the world. Prayer is a weapon. It is our first line of defense and attack against all of the evil in the world. It is not a last resort, and it is something that we absolutely should be engaging in every single day, but especially today as well. Speaking of prayer, we've got a new episode of our faith-based series, which we go into in a lot more detail, as opposed to just covering like news and current events on the stream over in our locals community tonight. I would love for you guys to check it out, and I think you guys are going to absolutely love this episode. So you can jump over to locals for our post-game Q&A that we do every single day using the link I just dropped in our chat. And otherwise, if you can't join our Q&A, head to isabelbrown.locals.com to access all of our other exclusive content that doesn't exist on YouTube, Rumble, on Facebook, or on Getter. We would love to see you guys over there where you guys can make much more of an intimate community amongst yourselves as well, and I get to know you a little bit better. I hope that you guys have a phenomenal Tuesday evening. Go outside and touch grass if you haven't already, and hope that you get to wear a sweatshirt because it's a little bit chilly as it is in Miami on this beautiful, unexpected fall day. I love you guys so very much. Thank you for always being there and being willing to tell the truth even when it's hard. Before you go, do me a huge favor and hit that like button that could look like a little thumbs up or it could look like a little heart. Ring the notification bell so that you always know when we are going live and when we upload a new video for you guys. And beyond that, most importantly, smash that follow or subscribe button so that we can keep growing these channels and have important conversations where the world needs to have them most. YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, and Getter. We will see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern back for the stream. Locals, don't go anywhere. We will be right back.